Hello, hello, and welcome to the Keshanar Confidential. This is a series where we're taking a look behind the scenes of the making of the Kingdom of Keshanar, which is an absolutely massive D&D 5th edition supplement that asks the very important question, what if the gods, the magic, and the monsters of ancient Egypt were real? We've been talking with a wide variety of people that have been working on this project, and I am very excited about our guest today because he's kind of the main man right now. Marx, would you care to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Marx Brothers. I am the architect of adventure at Orthane Productions, or COO, or mechanics guy, or, well, just whatever is necessary at the time.
Very much holding true to the spirit of the project in that hired for one thing, end up doing 6 or 10 things.
That is the only way it ever works in a company like this.
You want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be involved?
Sure. My professional background is all over the place, starting with good old 10 years in automotive, followed by another good 10 years in the IT sector. Most recently, doing supply chain modernization for a Fortune 50 company. So luckily, I've fully gotten out of that and will never have to do anything with supply chain ever again. He said sarcastically as he's looking over all the packages that he's going to have to figure out how to ship and send. But I've been, as far as the fun and interesting stuff, I've been playing various different types of TTRPGs for a good 10, 20 years. Been DMing pretty seriously for 5 or 10 of those at this point. Started out actually outside of high fantasy in more of the World of Darkness, alternate, modern timeline stuff, or futuristic Rift Shadowrun stuff. And it wasn't until very recent years that I got into the high fantasy things like Pathfinder, or and eventually Dungeons and Dragons, when everything finally clicked. So with that, finally having something where it was both like I enjoyed playing it and enjoyed actually being able to tell stories in it. D&D has been kind of my life for a a good period of time now. Followed by No, just followed by that. So sticking with Dungeons and Dragons from at least the near future, especially while building out this project. So now I am full-time with Orthane Productions. Started out doing just a little bit here and there for the past, well, probably the entirety, 3, 4 years, but being able to actually be a full-time part of it since 6 months now. I'm not sure how time works anymore. Time is a thing, right?
I'm not the person to ask at this direct moment.
Okay, it's just been this weird soup of experiences since, I assume, February. So, but it's been, an absolute whirlwind of so much fun and so much work this entire Kickstarter.
Tell me about your first introduction to Keshanar. How did you get involved, and what were your very first impressions?
My first introduction to Keshanar was actually as a player. Before Dave had decided, to put the serious effort into making this a publishable thing, it was his home setting for a period of a sizable period of time. So I got to play in the entire campaign from level 1 to level 20. Lots of milestones in there. My first legitimate character death from a DM. That was a pretty special moment for me. It took a power word kill on my level 4 character, but I did finally get legitimately killed by a DM, so that was kind of cool. And just exploring not only, the city, which just the massive amount of things that were available in the city. And this is kind of where I knew there was something special, is that Dave had shared a folder with us, and there were just spreadsheets of different buildings and different, what the NPCs were in those buildings and the temples, and there were temples for sale, and how much, like, the sheer amount of material available for, at this time, just a home game really showed how much care and thought he had put into it over the years. So that definitely drew me in. Also, just the amount of actual Egyptian inspired content throughout was really cool. As most kids, I had the full Egypt mania kind of obsession. I think I did in elementary school a bonus project on the Book of the Dead. I wish I could find that. It has been lost to the annals of history. So all of this together, plus just I may be a slight bit of they used to call us power gamers. I think the new term is optimizer now, so which is a much nicer term. I feel a lot less bad about being called an optimizer as opposed to a power gamer. But he was a great DM for letting that side out, and boy howdy, it got pretty nutsoid out in the kingdom of Keshanar. So that was my introduction into it, and then as soon as Dave decided he was going to put this out for real, I definitely here and there had to be involved in just giving ideas or harking back to what we had learned and figured out during the last full playthrough.
That's a very common thread when I ask people about what their first impressions of Keshanar was like, is they are just kind of blown away by the sheer scale of it.
For sure. I'm a preparation DM. I like to have as much at my disposal as possible. I can improv, but I do so much better when I have everything, like all the different possible paths kind of like somewhat planned out, or have at least the reference there, as opposed to pulling everything off the top of my head. So having all those tool sets available have been very helpful.
Looking back, since you've been involved with the Keshanar setting, as you mentioned, for years now, what for you is the most noticeable difference between when you first played it and the version that you are working on right now?
Oh boy. I think it's a lot more tightened up. Um, there was a whole lot of I mean, the players are always going to drive the narrative, but um I think there was a lot of more out there, wild, crazy whimsy that worked at our table would necessarily be a universal table thing. There was, we ran into what? There's no way that would ever come out. Should I say that? Possibly. There's like an artificial intelligence, sort of thing where it just does not make sense for the setting, but it was a fun little thing for us. So just having everything be a lot more tied to the setting and a lot more legitimate, and having less out there, wild, crazy, silly things that just don't really fit as much. That and doing the research to make sure that everything is on par, or on par might not be the best word, but valid is also not the best word, but a lot closer to the source material, right? So doing a lot more research, a lot less like, okay, this is kind of like my thoughts on what this part of ancient Egypt would have been about and like and everything, but actually being able to pull in the real history and the real inspiration, I think would be one of the biggest changes.
That absolutely has been one of my favorite parts about working on this project, because my background is in art history and dress and textile history also, and getting to absolutely nerd out with Dr. Jill and some of the other academics that we've kind of pulled into this sphere. I feel like it's really lent, as you said, such an air of authenticity and validity to the project and what we're doing.
Absolutely. And it's and ancient Egypt isn't the only thing we are trying to be true to here, and we're trying to respect the source material, right? Dungeons and Dragons itself has been around for well, I guess 50 years. Yes, we've just hit the 50 years, and when you look at all the cosmology that's out there, all the lore that's out there, and the way it works, so trying to remain kind of true to what's already existing out in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, or worlds, or many different material planes, and that whole cosmology, and trying to fit that all together so that we're, you know because this is not ancient Egypt. This is ancient Egypt inspired, right? We didn't take Cairo and then put it in the middle of Faerun. This is its own world that is very heavily influenced, but does also fit in the well, not the well, yes, does fit in the pantheon is the wrong word. The planescape of the Dungeons and Dragons worlds as well.
Yeah, there absolutely has been so much content that we've made for this, and I know that there are so many things that have ended up on the cutting room floor, as it were. Um, Looking across, this wide breadth of material that we have, what for you is the criteria for what is something that stays in and something that gets the axe, as it were?
The best thing, the things that stay in, that are the highest priority, are the things that hit true for both sides of the equation. So they hit true for ancient Egypt, and they hit true for Dungeons and Dragons. And there's a few things like that where there would be like, this is the perfect mix of those things. So those are the highest priority to keep in. So and then as far as what would hit the cutting room floor, um, fun is kind of a large requirement, right? So if it's not enjoyable, right, it doesn't really need to, at least at the beginning, have a, well, it doesn't either. If it's not enjoyable, it doesn't have a place in there, of course. But if it's something that we need to put a lot of more work in to make sure that we can find the right spot where people will be able to enjoy it properly, that would be the sort of thing that would cut most easily. And then also being able to balance content, that's been a huge one. Going into part of my job, because I'm responsible for all the mechanics of Keshanar, so all the monsters and the spells and the subclasses and the species and anything that a player can put on their character sheet, right? That's all my life. So when we're looking at making sure we have a good balance of what we're putting out, when we first come in, we're talking about the subclasses, and then everything is like, oh, we need to have clerics for days, right? There are so many gods, and the gods of ancient Egypt are such a big thing that we need to have, there are so many ideas for all the different clerics and paladins and holy people, right? And we end up with 13 different cleric subclasses when we really need to have 12 subclasses total, like one for each class. So being able to, I think, cut down, at least initially, the interactions between players and gods mechanically has been a huge thing that's had to go to the cutting room floor. There's huge files of that that aren't going away forever. There are definitely ideas on those, but as far as like what we're gonna be able to put out in the first book, I can put out one cleric and one paladin, not like 13 of each. So I think that would be one of the biggest things that I've had to go through and just chop through.
I know this is a very loaded question. And every time I have a creative on here and ask them something like this, they're always like, "How dare you?" But do you have a favorite piece of content, whether it's a monster, a faction, whatever, that's come out of this project?
I have a couple, and in different ways. Um, Starting with the monster side, and this is one art's gone out about a bunch, the Mirage Demon, and we actually did throw out a stat box block for the Mirage Demon. A lot of cool and innovative things we were able to do with the abilities of that monster, as far as like how it like draws people in, and how we're taking the idea of mirage and kind of expanding that out. What would a demon that looks like Oasis in the desert look like, right? What would that look like? What would that look like in an urban environment? Is that is it a soup kitchen somewhere in a more derelict part of town? Something really dark like that. So like, how do you pull in that sort of like really just not nice undead sort of thing, and then how the mechanics go with that. But on the subclass side, one that hasn't come out yet that we will be playtesting pretty soon, the monk subclass, I'm pretty proud of because of how well it's integrating the actual ancient Egyptian history. So there is a number of forms of stick fighting that have come out of ancient Egypt. You see in a lot of the depictions, the hieroglyphs and everything, of either using two like handheld like batons, or a very large long quarterstaff stick sort of thing. So kind of being able to go through what people have figured out about how that fighting style would have worked, which there is no full record of, right? So kind of getting the ideas people have had over the years, and there's even like a full modern martial art about it, on the long stick fighting side. So taking that, and of course it had to be a monk, right? That is the most like quarterstaffy, like martial arty sort of class in Dungeons and Dragons. So taking something like that and making kind of a really cool, I think, really cool monk subclass that is not magic oriented, and being able to actually integrate that level of actual like ancient Egyptian fighting style, something that really happened, in pulling those things together, I think has been pretty cool. So I think those, and I have 17 other favorite things, but I'll cheat and go with two to start with.
That is an excellent answer. I know I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I love awful monsters, and I adore the Mirage Demon. It's so terrible. I love it.
Oh, it's so mean, and it's just this amalgamation of like all the different souls it's collected over time. So the coming to get coming to consciousness as its own thing, and having that form of malevolence in it. Oh, it's just the number of monsters in here that you could have just a whole story arc around is so cool. That, and of course, all the different Duskers.
Oh my gosh, yes, the Duskers.
There's that's I think there's some we are working on art on the different, because we have the standard Dusker, and then we have some of the non-standard Duskers that aren't necessarily around at the modern era of Keshanar. There was a period in the past where some necromancers went gung ho on making all the military Duskers, and well, just after a period of time, for certain reasons, they had to pull back on it. Maybe a couple necromancers went a little far, so you're not going to see these out there as part of the military anymore. But there might be a few of them still stuck out in the sand somewhere that you might be able to run into. So I'm very excited for what these abominations are going to turn out, art wise, and then of course, the mechanics I build into it based on that.
For anyone that's not following Keshanar on social media, definitely do that, because the art for some of these things is so amazingly creepy. Big shout out to our artists for bringing those to life. If you want to see sneak peeks of these, definitely follow on Facebook and Instagram. To shift gears a little bit here, you have been doing the convention crawl, as it were, yes?
Oh golly gee willikers, have I been doing the convention crawl. Me and Khonshu have been just up and down uh, the East Coast and Midwest or Mid East. I don't know, wherever Wisconsin is, that away between just on a loop between here and Wisconsin and the bits in between,
How
and that
much has taking this to different conventions affected the material?
Um, for the mechanics, the play test of the mechanics, it's been invaluable, right? For the 8 subclasses that were the little easier to build out and to kind of flesh out enough that I was able to bring them to the conventions. Just being able to play them with all the different people, that's been invaluable. We'll be having some more like wider play testing coming up soon, but having that, we're actually seeing like, okay, where are people going to really trip up on this, or is this too complicated, or did I just leave something seriously open here? Yes, I sure did. Whoopsie. Has been great. And then as far as the content, seeing like what types of content have really drawn people's interest, like where you can see it in their face that they go, "Oh, this is super cool," right? So just actually being able to see someone's reactions in real time has been invaluable. Like even more so than like having a booth where people can come up and we can talk to them about things. Just playing with people at tables has been the most important thing that we've done at these conventions. And also my favorite, because I get to go run games and DM for strangers, right? It's just so cool. It's such a great life to be able to do.
Is there a particular element of Keshanar, like the gaming experience itself, that players seem to all kind of have a "oh wow" reaction to?
Hmm. I think well, the city itself, of course, because when we go, being able to show them like the big giant maps we have, the being able to show them like the Unreal Engine build, right? The full 3D map of the city, and just like how complete of an urban environment it is, and just the scope of it. Um, and then like seeing the little details of things like the pillars of Memnon just floating around in the sky, or the big old monument of Sekhmet, the big sphinx looking giant statue in the part of the city. The diversity of it. Every time I give a little description of Troll Town, as a little bit more of a revelry area, there's always like a little chuckle to that as well. So just the fact that it feels like an alive city, and that there is actual, we call them calderas, but boroughs or sub cities in it, like cities within a city, just makes it feel real to people.
So, considering how many times you have run this now, do you have a favorite one shot?
um so perfect traps are best, hands down. That is our best one shot. um I th- I am a little more ew, it's hard to pick a favorite. I have a lot more personally put into Snatching Hope from the Jaws of Defeat. I've rewritten the most of that. I also kind of rewrote most of Many Hands Make Short Work or Light Work, depending of what region of the US you are. There's a debate on whether that idiom is Many Hands Make Short Work or Many Hands Make Light Work, but whichever one you enjoy. Wow, I just named all 3 modules as something. So no,
Yeah.
apparently I don't. There are just cool moments that are my favorite from each of them. Um, that and just I kind of love a pun. So when you start out with a pun and then you build a whole module around it, um, that is a lot of fun, and watching people's faces when they get it and they go you know that was a cheesy joke you made, and I'm like, yes, it sure was. Roll initiative.
This is real big. I love all my children equally energy.
It is. I'm going to have to say Snatching Hope, though. There are a lot more like of my moments that I've had joy running in that one versus the other ones.
Since you've had experience extensively as both a player and a DM in this setting, what piece of advice would you give to people that are brand new to this when they get the book right in their hands? If you could give them just any tip, what would it be?
Ooh, start start small, right? One of the great things about having, and if we're talking about from a DMing perspective anyway, one of the great things about having the city broken up the way we do and having each caldera be so well defined is that you can have quite a number of adventures in just one small area of the city. That helps both you and your players get kind of acclimated to what version of Keshanar you're going to be telling at your table. And then it's a lot easier to start branching out from there, doing a little intro for each of the little areas of the city, like getting the feel of the themes down. And then, getting as much like of a good starting place in the city as possible before like going out into the rest of the world. Um, but as opposed to other jumping off areas, i.e., like Rock of Brawl, where you start out there and you kind of like going out to the rest of Wild Space and the West of Realm Space and everything. This really is a full port of Call where you're going to keep coming back to and keep coming back to. So just anything you can do to take your time and get acclimated, I think would be my biggest piece of advice for a DM.
And what about for players?
For players, now for let's see, coming through with the module, I would definitely recommend trying to tie your backstory as closely to the well, actually not trying to tie your backstory closely to the city, right? I think coming into Keshanar as a player, as a fish out of water, is a lot more. I mean, both have their benefits, but I think can be a lot more enjoyable of an experience than like, oh, I'm old hat, I've been here forever. Having your characters wander to the new experiences and the players wander to new experiences, be coinciding, I think is a great way to play in this setting.
Do you have a favorite class that you like to play?
That I like to. Oh golly! So as a forever DM, all of them, but if I'm skipping over the artificer and going to the 12 main classes, um, in the 2024 rule set, which is where the entirety of my life is right now, I think I think the martial classes. I might still have to go with the fighter on this one. There's just it's been the fighter has gotten such a glow up in the 2024 rules, and has somehow also become a skill junkie with one of its features being able to like add a D10 onto skill checks and everything. They've really opened up the fighter class. Um, so that's what I'm doing in one of my home campaigns. Um, and then from the non-martial side, I just have to go with the sorcerer. The What they've done with the innate sorcery feature on those now, where they're basically sorceress rage, where you have just this blast of magic coming out of you, is just too cool.
To backtrack a little bit, you mentioned the Unreal Engine, which I highly encourage everyone to go look at one of our YouTube videos or the website or whatever. Just go somewhere and look at a video of it because it's amazing. How does that? How do you use that as a DM? from your own perspective?
So actually, yes, I when I was doing the rewrite on one of our modules on mini hands make light work, I used that one quite a bit. Getting a feel of where I am when I'm writing part of the story, and then like what does I know I want to go to somewhere else in the city, so what does that walk look like? What am I seeing? Is there a good clear path? Oh, right, I'd have to go all the way around this way to get there. So being able to visualize the journey that my players are going to go through has been really useful in adding details about that journey. Like, oh, we're going to be walking by the Chemidrone, the big arena of chariot racing. Is that something that I can pull into this? Or hey, this is smack dab in the middle of the water. Okay. How does that actually interact with, like what would that look like from the docks? So what would the players see when they are looking out in the distance? So from a writing perspective, it has been super invaluable.
How do you use it from a DM's perspective, though? Like during gameplay or setup or what have you?
From a DM's perspective, being able to have, depending on your level of like how much tech you're going to be using at the table, right? So having a screen where it shows the landscape for the players, right? So they have a good visual of what the area is looking like, or being able to use one of the transitional videos, right? I think we're going to be putting some of these out. I know we have some where it's like, here is a video of moving from location A to location B, and just being able to show that to the players. Um, then, of course, like all the other things we've been advertising, like being able to create the virtual tabletop maps, right? Because I've noticed this is going to be shocking for people. Sometimes players do things that you're not expecting them to do. This is my big like insight that no one in the rest of the world has figured out, of course. So sometimes you're going to be going places, and I like to have big, pretty maps. So being able to have that, take that, like, hey, let's take a bio break, and I will, take 5 minutes to create that overhead map and do the upload and blah blah and throw it up on Roll20 or whatever your preferred VTT apparatus is very useful as well.
I know exactly what you mean about players doing things that are wholly unexpected. My partner was running I think it was a Shadowrun game a number of years ago and had this whole elaborate heist set up with like alarms and traps and there was prep involved, right? And the players instead literally go and steal a bulldozer and drive through a wall, and that's it.
That sounds like the DMing experience, yes.
Yep. In terms of the Unreal Engine again, you talked about the map making feature, which I have spoken about before with one of the fellas who made it on an earlier episode. Do you see that having a place in terms of streaming games?
Streaming, it definitely could. If you have, you gotta have like support staff for that, right? There needs to be someone who's sitting there, and like it's basically like a assistant DM position, right? Kind of thinking through like, okay, they're gonna be moving here, so what movements can I make, in a live rendering of the city, right? Where you're just like moving the character around and everything. I think for sure that could be a thing. I like to try to do that at our con games as much as possible. We're getting to the point where I'm going to need to get a assistant DM at the con game tables just to like run the city movement while we are DMing and everything. Actually, there's like what we really want to do is get a like a tension screen for for a projector, for a laser projector, so that we could have like the city behind us projected onto a screen so the players can see that behind us while we are describing what's going on in the city. Having that sort of same
Ooh.
thing streaming would be really cool as well. Yeah, that's what I'm working on the logistics of like how to. Con games are fun for that sort of thing because there is a full balance of like there's so much cool stuff we can put there, but also like for some of these, we need to have like a 5-minute tear down at the end of the game, so the next table can come in. So how cool can we make it versus how much time do we have to tear down the cool that we've made?
Honestly, that sounds kind of like the editing process for this whole project.
A little bit, yes.
Well, speaking of editing this project, especially since you're more focused on the mechanics than some of the other writers that we've had on here, do you have any major pieces of advice that you would give to someone who is also interested in maybe putting their own homebrew project out into the world?
Ooh. Putting their own homebrew projects. I would say my piece of advice would be to start small. The the sheer scope of what we're doing is only possible because of the number of people we have working on it, right? As when you are creating, start with your city, start with your town, start with your basic like premise of what your homebrew setting is, and kind of build out from there. Getting it out there to start with, right, is a huge thing. So being able to just, even if you're just delivering a small piece of it, which in theory is kind of what we're doing, because Orthane's a big world, and we're starting with one kingdom, the kingdom of Keshanar and Orthane, and mostly staying within one city in Keshanar, right? The kingdom's a lot bigger than just this one city, which we're going to hit little pieces of it there, but fleshing out smaller pieces and getting that out to the world would be a great way to start. Not that that's what we're doing, with this giant full map of the city, fully fleshed out, all the temples and like the gods and everything. This is more of a follow my advice and not what I'm doing suggestion.
Yeah, if we have one fatal flaw, it's that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, on this project thinks small. Ever.
No. There's no. I mean that is, and that's indicative of Dave, right? That is
Mhm.
Dave has never thought small about a single thing in his entire life. So that is something that he either sees in people or will fully bring out in people. Like, just like, hey, just shoot for the stars on this.
Okay, while the boss isn't looking, how much of your job is going Dave no and him going Dave yes?
It's a little more of a negotiation than that. There are some back and forth. There is the occasion like, no, we can't do it that way, and but there, and a lot of that I have to like, do some introspection on, is like, well, can we really not do it that way, or should we not do it that way, or would it just be easier on everyone if we didn't do it that way, right? Is this a bad idea, or is this just a lot of work? And most of the time I find out it's not a bad idea. It's adding a lot more work, and then it just becomes a lot of, I think, of what I'm doing is not so much saying no, it's giving a realistic cost benefit analysis on things, right? And that is that communication is key, right? It's like, no, these are all things we can do. This is what it's going to cost us, not necessarily monetarily, but like, in time, effort, so on and so forth, and what we're going to have to give up to do it, right? So I'd say it's more giving the realistic expectations than saying, no, we can't do this. with a couple of notable exceptions where I absolutely had to say, no, Dave, we can't do this.
Well, you definitely rolled a success on your diplomacy. I'll allow it.
I
So
mean,
obviously this project is naturally Dungeons and Dragons focused. Not to put you wholly on the spot, but I absolutely am going to. There's been a lot of questions about adapting this for another rule system. Do you have any thoughts or feelings on that?
I do. And so it's definitely something that could happen, right? Right now we're not necessarily like system agnostic. Well, it's not necessarily more system agnostic versus setting agnostic, because those are two different things, right? Because D&D is both a system and a setting. In that you think of things in D&D where there are the different creature types, right? So a fae is sort of a thing, and a aberration, and the idea of what an aberration is sort of a thing, where that's not necessarily tied to the system of, say, D&D 5e 2014, 2024, 3rd edition, 3.5, blah, 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 but it's more tied to the setting of D&D. So those are some of the things, like the mechanics, sure, that is something I would just need to go through, see what would need to be converted and convert over. Like, what are monsters like in this different system, and what are character classes like in this different system. But it's also digging through, and it's like, what parts of the Dungeons and Dragons, world building are we kind of ingrained in, and what parts can we move over to this new, not just system but setting, right? That being said, there's a lot of really good systems out there, and even and new ones coming out not every day, but every year. There have been a couple of really interesting ones that have recently come out, right? Very excited to see what happens with those. I'm going to say, for right now, being like the lead mechanics person, I kind of need to have the entirety of like the D&D 2024 rule set and mechanics loaded into my brain. So I'm not, until we're done with this, I'm not digging deep into any other rule sets, because it's just, I don't want to conflate those, right? And it's like, hey, why does this monster kind of look like it came out of Shadowrun for some reason? Whoopsie. So I think that is something we're not saying no to. And I know that everyone has their own like favorite system. Like, this would be really cool to put into that. A lot of the book, the main everything, can be used system agnostic, right? So what we're really talking about for most of this is adapting monsters and subclasses and classes and that sort of thing. So I want to do that later on, but it is going to be a matter of like a serious cost benefit analysis and a real serious question of what system would that be, and that is not a question I have an answer for at this point.
Okay. Say that you are magically plucked up and set down in Keshanar City. What is the first place that you are going to?
Uh First place I'm going to is, of course, the Rock and Troll Cafe, the most famous inn in all of Keshanar, and maybe the kingdom itself. It has been the hub it was the hub in our home game, and in most home games. It's the hub of one or two of the modules as well. It's just a beautiful building. It's one of the only ones that we have, like, as far as the 4-story, the actual, like, the interior of the building built out in the Unreal Engine. But beyond that, there is, if you go into the 3D building, there is a behind the bar, a piece of art behind the bar that has a adventuring party, depicts an adventuring party sitting at the Rock and Troll Cafe. And that actually came from when Dave ran my party through. Keshanar. So that is actually I might be the first piece of Keshanar art was he got that commissioned as a present to our party of like, here is your characters in Keshanar. And that gets to live behind the counter at the Rock and Troll Cafe. Also, Happy, the Minotaur barkeep, is just a fun, solid guy. So I feel pretty safe there. Outside of that, I'd have to say, I don't know, like the Pharaoh's Vault. That would be a great place to drop in for obvious reasons as well.
So, would you say that everybody at the Rock and Troll Cafe knows your name?
That is probably pretty accurate. If you've been around for a little while, that's there might be one or two nods to less ancient pop culture here and there in the Kingdom of Keshanar. Gnome Depot is one of my favorite places to go shopping in Keshanar for magic items and other just random things.
Okay, well, we are going to enter the hard-hitting journalism portion of events now.
Neat.
So, I hope that you are buckled in and ready for this.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. Since you are the mechanics guy, I'm actually going to switch it up a little bit for you here. Which I also would like to add that I think you're a very brave soul, because anything involving that many numbers makes me kind of have brain melt. Okay. So, would you rather fight 20 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
I'm going to go with 20 duck-sized horses. I don't think I'm going to win either way, but there is a certain anatomical property of a duck that a duck of that size, I would have nightmares about that for the rest of my life. We won't go into the specifics of it, but there is some pure nightmare fuel to the concept of a horse-sized duck. So I would rather be trampled to death by so many duck-sized horses.
That is a very confident answer.
I've had no nightmares about this, so I didn't have anything to, go back on over and over again.
I mean,
Every
I
time
feel
I
like
click
at least
on
it's a duck and not a goose, right?
Well, yeah, I mean the goose, at least they're ooh, no, that'd both be a problem. Eeh. Well, the goose is gonna bite you more though. Oh man, a goose bite of that size. Eeh.
Right? I have been chased by any number of geese, and I just don't need one of that size ever.
Giant goose game. There we go. That's like that's hard level or like expert level.
We're running a summer game here. It's our youngest's first time playing, and I'm just kind of making up monsters as we go. And one of them I came up with was a giant goose, but it's actually a hydra, and we nicknamed it Lucifer Goosifer.
Oh, that's so good. I think I've seen. There's actually, take a look at there might be art out there in the world. I feel like I've seen the Hydra goose before, or maybe that came from you. I don't know. I've seen this image is in my head.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, because there's a propensity for humans to take something awful and go, gee, how can I make this worse?
Yes, and also then share it with the rest of the world. It's like, this was in my brain, and now it gets to be in yours. Ha 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 ha.
Sharing is caring.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down to chat with us. It was extremely informative. I'm hoping that we can catch you up again here with you as the process of finalizing the Kingdom of Keshanar goes forward.
No, it's been an absolute blast. I so much more relaxing than all the last times I was on video for Keshanar, coming out of the Kickstarter, where my hair was still all the way on end on fire and everything. So having a nice relaxing chat about Keshanar has been something I've been very much looking forward to.
Excellent. Well, I am happy to provide. Okay, well, this is going to do it for this episode of Keshanar Confidential. We can be found across all social media platforms. We are probably most active on Facebook and Instagram, with relatively regular uploads to YouTube as well. More information can be found at Keshanar.com. My name is Lady X. I am an uncouth bystander of Set, and I will see you in the next episode.